Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest Silent Hill podcast. Well, my last video seems to have a pretty good reception, so I thought I would make another one here. This time, again, focusing on one of the earliest monsters found within the first Silent Hill game. This one, just like the Grey Child, also makes a very memorable appearance, and in fact, it probably is one of the most frequent monsters encountered within the first Silent Hill game. And what I'm talking about is the one that's called the Air Screamer, which you'll see a picture of here. Those of you that first played the game all those years back, you know exactly what I'm talking about when it came to that very memorable moment of the Air Screamer coming into the video game. And it has to do with its introduction there at the Cafe 5 to 2 location within Silent Hill. That's when the main character, that guy, Harry, he first encounters this creature shortly after talking to Sybil. And what happened was, of course, they were just talking, and he was trying to figure out what the hell was happening. Did he really just encounter those what were inevitably to be the Grey Children? And then Sybil, the cop, she wasn't really essentially up to that point, like maybe not encountering these things like Harry was. But shortly after their conversation ended, sure enough, he starts hearing some fluttering, he starts hearing some flapping, and then this thing just pulverizes straight through that window, and then that's when everything else starts happening afterward with his encounter. So, as far as the Air Screamer and what it's supposed to represent, basically it's supposed to be the manifestation of Alessa's fear of large flying animals, and specifically, it's supposed to be coming from one of her favorite books, which was The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This was a book that apparently she was a huge fan of when she was a child, and even younger than there in the game, and because of it, it just subconsciously manifested as a monster or variation of it there whenever Silent Hill took over. And so in her case, this air screamer is again, it could be like a pterodactyl or it could be a pterodon, but it's something as far as a manifestation of her favorite book, The Lost World, and the dinosaurs that were within it. Now, the air screamer, it's a pretty lethal monster, but only if you let it be. And what I mean is this: it's easily avoidable. I'm watching the playthrough and the walkthrough. The guy that was playing there on YouTube, I mean, he would essentially either just run away as quickly as he can, or he would spurt here and out, left and right, just to ensure that the air screamer would eventually just go away. And either way, it was a good way of essentially stopping the number of bullets being wasted on so many of these, because there are a whole bunch of these within the game itself. As I mentioned, this is probably one of the most prolific monsters there within the game. And the way the air screamer attacks is just like any other large flying animal. It'll pounce straight on Harry, the main character, and it'll use its talons, whatever it has on its feet, to cause great damage, and it takes a couple of those strikes to bring Harry down altogether. One air screamer is alright to deal with, but the danger comes with many of them, and that's what can happen. If the more you're running through Silent Hill, either through the Grey World or through the other world, the more you'll encounter these things. And so, the best thing that I saw this guy doing on the Silent Hill walkthrough was essentially just try to avoid them altogether. Now, the way they look, basically, as they seem to be, again, closest thing to like a dinosaur, like a pterodon or anything involving a pterodactyl. They just seem to be something that it looks far more dinosaur-like than monster-oriented. I mean, still, some of their characteristics are a little bit more malevolent. Like, if you look at their skin, there's just something sickly associated with their skin. It looks like it's skin that's, I don't know, burned, or skin that's mangled. Whatever the case may be, it still is an unsightly thing to look at. Now, when it comes to its neighbor, there's actually a variation of the air screamer within the game, and this happens in the other world, the dark world, and it's called the Night Flutter, which you'll see a picture of here. This takes things to a whole other level. And the reason why is because its skin, as bad as it looked as an air screamer, now looks all much worse. And you'll see and the reason why. Its body also takes more of a humanoid appearance, which just adds that extra angle of creepiness, because here you're dealing with something, whereas before it looked like a dinosaur, now in this case it looks like more like a strange thing, like a demon-like man that just happens to have wings and flutters. But by far its most protruding feature is its head. It's been replaced by something like a massive something that seems to be worms. The detail within the game is not too much where you can see those worms, but at least when it comes to the artwork, it's definitely there. It's just a writhing mass of worms, and one could imagine, seeing something like this there in the other world, how much of a scarier sight this is. If there's one thing that's a loss within the Silent Hill franchise, it's the fact that none of these creatures, either the Air Screamer or its cousin the Night Flutter, were ever given a chance within the Silent Hill movies. I mean, if there's anything begging to showcase the talents of the monsters and how good they can look, good in a sense of how profoundly impactful they can be, it's these creatures. But unfortunately, most likely due to budget issues, these creatures were never placed into any of the films. But man, what a sight that would have been. Imagine if something involving these creatures, there was maybe a scene with Rose, or maybe with a scene with Heather from the second film. Imagine if something like that could occur, where you see these things flapping and fluttering, creating just a sickly sight. Man, what a great loss that was. Also, I mean, it makes kind of sense that they didn't go that route, because when one thinks about it, in the Silent Hill movies, most, if not all, of the creatures are basically humanoid or human-like. So that way it's cheaper. It's basically a monster or a man in suit type deal, or in some cases, like the Grey Child, it's a woman in suit, and just with a little bit of added special effects. Short of like that mannequin monster from the second film, which was completely CGI, most if not all the other ones were man or human-like. So that's why they probably, again, the producers skipped having the Air Screamer and the Night Flutter, because if you wanted those things within the film, you would absolutely have to make them pretty much 100% CGI, and that would just add so much more costs. Interesting little bit of trivia tied to the Air Screamer. Their inspiration comes from a very good novella called Stephen King's The Mist. If you've seen the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The movie came out a couple of years back, but it was based on the short novel or novella that Stephen King made a long time ago. I think it was sometime in the 80s or so, either 1980 or 1985, somewhere around there. And in it, there's a very memorable scene of one of these pteranodon type monsters that crashes through the window of a grocery store, and then is fluttering around within the grocery store, attacking people, and they try to take it down. Very memorable scene. The book has a great set of pages dedicated to it. The movie, seeing it visually, it just adds that much more impact. And the Stephen King mentioned that the inspiration from this actually came from just randomness. What had happened was, there was a real life huge storm that occurred where he lived, and shortly thereafter, essentially the next morning, him and his son went to the grocery store, just like a bunch of other people, to try to stock up on supplies. And he said that while the lines were long and he was waiting there just to purchase everything, then all of a sudden it just hit him, just a random thought. He realized, how would this experience be if all of a sudden something like a pteranodon or something involving like a dinosaur-like creature was suddenly flapping around the top of the store, like let's say flapping around the ceiling and just going aisle to aisle. And that inspiration eventually led him to try to come up with the Mist. And then in that case, the Mist in turn influenced Silent Hill, because Silent Hill definitely lists the Mist as one of their favorite inspirations for the franchise. Interesting stuff, interesting bit of trivia. This character, then the Air Screamer, might actually be the first thing that ever started the world of Silent Hill. I wish there was more definitive proof on this, but at least that's my theory when it comes to that. As far as little cameos that the Air Screamer, the Night Flutter have had, again, they weren't involved in anything involving the films, but they were involved with some of the other franchise-related products, and that is, for example, the Play Novel. The Play Novel was a product that was only released in Japan. I think it's like a motion novel of some sort. It's where you're reading the novel and then you reach certain sequences, and then little GIFs or whatever little movie sequences play out based on what you're reading. And so it made a cameo there, but it made an even more memorable cameo within one of the comic books, and that is Painted Black, which you'll see a picture of here. And it goes the main character within that particular comic book, when he reaches Silent Hill and he notices whatever this thing is, he didn't have a name for it, but he noticed it flying above. I think he said something to the effect of cool, or something like cool things, something along those lines. So he's not scared. He's just thinking to himself, man, that's a pretty cool sight, because to him, he's an artist, and to see something like this flying around is an artist's inspiration. So what do you guys think? The Air Screamer, i.e. also the Night Flutter, pretty memorable creature. Again, one of the earliest ones encountered within the Silent Hill world, and also one of the ones most common found within the Silent Hill world. So, alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.